I used to believe my marriage was something stable and ordinary. The kind of life that doesn't need questioning because it looks calm on the surface. There were no loud arguments. No obvious betrayals. No dramatic moments that would make me stop and think twice. Everything felt controlled. Predictable. Almost safe in a way that made me relax into it without hesitation. My husband would wake up at the same time every morning. Drink his coffee quietly. Go to work. Come back in the evening. And sit beside me as if that routine alone was proof that everything between us was fine. I started thinking that maybe love doesn't need excitement. Maybe it just needs consistency. And I convinced myself that I was lucky to have a peaceful marriage even if it wasn't passionate or emotional. But what I didn't understand at the time was that sometimes the most dangerous situations are not the loud ones. They are the ones that feel too quiet, too controlled, too perfect to ever question. Looking back now, I realize the truth was never hidden in one big moment. It was hidden in small details I ignored because I didn't want to create problems where there seemed to be none. It started with tiny changes in his behavior that I tried to rationalize immediately so I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. He began taking his phone with him everywhere. Even to rooms he never cared about before. He would turn the screen away when I entered the room. Not in an obvious way, but just enough for me to notice if I was paying attention. His passwords changed. And when I asked casually, he said it was for security at work. I accepted that answer without digging deeper because I trusted him, and because I didn't want to become the kind of person who doubts everything. But deep inside, there was a quiet feeling growing in me. Something I kept pushing away every time it appeared. Telling myself I was imagining things. Telling myself I was being paranoid. Telling myself that love should not be suspicious. Then came the day that changed everything completely. A day that looked normal from the outside but became the turning point of my entire life. I was at home doing simple things, cleaning, organizing, moving through my usual routine, when I noticed his jacket on the chair. His phone was inside it, and it kept vibrating softly, over and over again, like it was trying to call attention to something I was not supposed to see. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, just looking at it, feeling something I couldn't explain. I had seen his phone many times before without ever thinking of touching it. But that day something inside me was different. It wasn't curiosity exactly. And it wasn't suspicion either. It was more like a quiet instinct. A feeling that something important was sitting right in front of me, and I was about to walk past it forever if I didn't stop. When I finally picked it up, my hands were steady at first, because I still believed I would find nothing unusual. But the moment I unlocked it, everything inside me shifted. The screen lit up with messages, and one line immediately caught my attention. Not because it was dramatic at first glance, but because it felt unfamiliar, like it didn't belong to my world at all. It said, "I miss you. When will you tell her?" I remember reading it once, then again, and again, trying to make it mean something else, trying to twist it into something harmless. But the more I read, the more the reality became impossible to ignore. There were conversations, long emotional messages, memories being shared, plans being made, words that clearly belonged to a relationship I was never part of. It wasn't just one mistake or one misunderstanding. It was a full hidden life existing parallel to mine. Carefully maintained, carefully separated, and completely real. When he came home that evening, I was still sitting in the same place, holding his phone in my hands like it had suddenly become heavier than anything I had ever held before. I didn't scream when he walked in. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't ask 100 questions at once like I thought I would in such a moment. Instead, I just looked at him. And in that silence between us, I could feel something breaking that had actually been breaking for a long time without me noticing. The air in the room felt different. Like it was no longer our home, but a space where truth had finally entered after being locked outside for too long. When he saw my face and the phone in my hands, I didn't need to say anything. He already understood that the hidden truth had finally been found. What followed was not the dramatic confrontation I once imagined betrayal would look like. There were no loud explanations that fixed everything. No perfect apologies that erased the damage. At first, he tried to deny it. Then he tried to explain it. Then he stopped trying altogether because there was nothing left to hide anymore. And in that moment, I realized something painful but clear: the truth doesn't always come like an explosion. Sometimes it comes quietly, without warning, and leaves you standing in a reality that suddenly feels unfamiliar even though you've been living in it for years. In the days that followed, I barely recognized myself. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was disorientation. Like my entire understanding of my life had been rearranged overnight. I kept replaying everything in my mind. Every normal evening. Every conversation. Every smile. Searching for the moment where I should have known. But there was no single moment. That was the hardest part. It wasn't one mistake that destroyed us, it was a long silence I never questioned. I started seeing my life differently. Noticing how much of myself I had quietly sacrificed just to maintain peace. How many times I ignored my own doubts just to avoid conflict. How many parts of myself I had put aside because I believed stability was more important than truth. And yet, something unexpected began to happen as the pain settled into something quieter and more constant. Instead of breaking me completely, it started revealing things I had never allowed myself to see. I realized I had built my world around someone who was already emotionally gone. And I had stayed because I was afraid of what life would look like without that structure. But now that structure was gone, and instead of falling apart, I slowly started rebuilding. Not immediately. Not perfectly, but step by step. In small decisions that began to return pieces of myself I had lost along the way. I started focusing on my own life again. My own thoughts. my own identity outside of the marriage I thought defined me. And one day, much later, I understood something I never expected to learn from pain. The hidden truth was not only about him, or what he did, or the life he kept secret from me. It was also about me. About how I had stopped seeing myself clearly while trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. And once that truth came out, it didn't just end a marriage in my mind. It ended an illusion. And in its place, it quietly began something new that I didn't recognize at first, but eventually understood as freedom. And if there is one thing I carry with me now, it is this quiet awareness I didn't have before. I no longer confuse silence with peace, or routine with love. I listen more closely to the small feelings I once ignored, the ones that try to protect me before the truth becomes too heavy to face. Life is no longer about holding everything together at any cost. It is about being honest, even when that honesty changes everything. I don't know exactly what my future will look like, but for the first time, that uncertainty doesn't scare me. Because now, whatever I build next will be real, and it will finally belong to me.